The night sky over Seoul was clear when Dr. Park noticed something strange on his computer screen. He worked at the International Space Monitoring Facility, and his job was to watch for anything unusual in space. Tonight, something very unusual appeared. Rubbed his eyes and looked again. The radar showed dozens of large objects moving toward Earth. They were not asteroids. They were not satellites. They were ships. Alien ships. His hands shook as he reached for the phone. Within minutes, every space agency on Earth knew about the incoming fleet. Telescopes turned toward the sky. Scientists gathered in emergency meetings. News channels interrupted their regular programs. The whole world suddenly knew that humanity was not alone in the universe. The ships were in bad condition. Even through the telescopes, observers could see damaged hulls, failing engines, and makeshift repairs. These were not warships coming to invade. These were survivors running from something terrible. Ambassador received the emergency call at 3 in the morning. She was a senior diplomat at the United Nations, and now she had the most important job in human history. She had to figure out how to talk to aliens. The first message came 6 hours after detection. It was broadcast in a language that human computers could barely understand. Teams of linguists and programmers worked together to translate it. What they learned made the entire world go silent. The aliens called themselves Their home planet was destroyed. A species called the Devourers had consumed their world, and only 40,000 escaped. They had traveled across the galaxy, searching for a place to land. Every advanced civilization they found turned them away. No one wanted 40,000 refugees. Earth was their last hope. The message explained that humans were considered a primitive species by the rest of the galaxy. They knew this, but they had nowhere else to go. They were dying. Their ships were falling apart. They needed help. The spokesperson for them was an old alien named. His image appeared on every screen on Earth when the translation was complete. He had 3 eyes and skin that looked like purple crystal. He looked tired. He looked sad. He looked desperate. "We know we are asking for much," said through the translation software. "We do not have the right to ask, but we are asking anyway. We need only a small piece of land, somewhere we can rest, somewhere we can die in peace. We will not bother your civilization. We will stay separate, please. We have nowhere else to go." The message ended with coordinates for a safe landing zone and a promise to wait for Earth's answer. The Galactic Union Council held an emergency meeting in a space station far from Earth. They watched the human planet carefully. They expected Earth to do what every other civilized world did when refugees arrived. They expected humans to say no. Accepting refugees was expensive. It used too many resources. It created too many problems. And the Devourers might follow any planet that helped to put themselves in danger. It was logical to refuse. It was smart to refuse. It was safe to refuse. The Galactic Union observers made bets on how quickly Earth would send the refugees away. Some thought humans would refuse immediately. Others thought humans might offer some basic supplies before sending them to a quarantine world. No one expected what actually happened. Worked through the night with leaders from every major government on Earth. The emergency session of the United Nations General Assembly was the largest in history. Every nation sent representatives. Every nation had an opinion. The debate was fierce. Some leaders worried about the cost. Feeding 40,000 aliens would be expensive. Housing them would be difficult. What if they carried diseases? What if they were dangerous? What if the Devourers came looking for them? Other leaders saw an opportunity. They had advanced technology. They had knowledge of the galaxy. They could teach humanity about the universe beyond Earth. But most leaders focused on something simpler. 40,000 people needed help. Yes, they were aliens. Yes, it would be difficult. Yes, it would cost money. But they needed help, and Earth could provide it. The debate lasted 5 hours. The vote was not unanimous, but it was clear. Earth would accept the refugees. stood before the cameras to deliver Earth's response. Behind her, the flags of all nations hung in the General Assembly Hall. She spoke clearly and calmly. People of the fleet, this is Ambassador of Earth. We have received your message. We understand your situation. We have made our decision. She paused, and 40,000 aliens held their breath across the fleet. Come down, all of you. Land your ships. We will help you. We will find you places to live. We will share our resources. We will protect you. You are welcome here. The message was broadcast in every language Earth could manage, and in the language that computers had just learned to speak. On the Galactic Union monitoring station, Commander stared at his screen in disbelief. He turned to his second officer. Did they just accept all of them? Yes, Commander. But that's impossible. No species does that. The resource cost alone will destroy their economy. They'll have riots. Their society will collapse. The second officer checked the data again. The humans don't seem to know that, sir. Across the fleet, 40,000 aliens began to cry, sat in his command chair and covered his three eyes with his hands. His whole body shook. In 70 years of life, he had never expected to hear those words. You are welcome here. Within an hour, Earth's governments began coordinating landing sites, military bases activated, supply chains mobilized, hospitals prepared for alien patients, engineers designed emergency shelters, scientists studied biology from the data that's sent. Captain Lee of the Republic of Korea, Navy watched his radar screen as orders came through. His ships were to help guide the first wave of vessels to a landing site in Australia. Around the world, other militaries received similar orders. There was no fighting over who would host the refugees. Everyone wanted to help. The first ship entered Earth's atmosphere at dawn. Thousands of humans waited on the ground with water, food, medical supplies, and shelters. News cameras broadcast the landing to the entire world. The ship touched down gently in the red soil of the Australian outback. The door opened slowly. An alien stepped out into the sunlight of a new world. A human doctor stepped forward and offered her hand. The alien looked at the hand, then took it carefully. Welcome to Earth, the doctor said. The alien began to cry again. The second day after the landing was chaos, but it was organized chaos. Ships continued to arrive in waves. They landed in Australia, Mongolia, Canada, Argentina, and New Zealand. Every landing site had thousands of humans ready to help. Engineers stood in the middle of a construction zone in New Zealand. Around him, hundreds of volunteers worked to build temporary houses for the refugees. The structures were simple but functional. They had power, water, and air filtration systems modified to work for biology. How are we doing this so fast? Asked the engineer named who stood beside. The alien watched in amazement as humans assembled buildings in hours that would normally take days. Smiled, we've done this before. When disasters happen, when wars create refugees, we build emergency housing. This is just bigger. But we are not your species. Why do you work so hard for us? Stopped working and looked at. Because you need help, that's enough. Dr. Han had a different kind of problem. She was which meant she studied alien life. Before 3 days ago, that meant studying possibilities and theories. Now it meant studying real aliens who needed medical care. There were silicon-based life forms. Humans were carbon-based. Everything that kept humans alive was different from what kept alive. They breathed different air. They ate different food. They needed different medicine. Worked with a team of scientists and doctors around the clock. They studied the biological data that provided. They tested equipment. They made mistakes and fixed them. They learned fast because they had to. We need to build air processors for silicon-based respiration, explained to her team. They can breathe our air for a while, but it's not healthy for them long-term. Where do we get silicon-based air processors? Asked one of her assistants. We don't, we build them. Get me every industrial filter we have. Get me equipment from aquarium suppliers. Get me anything that processes silicon compounds. We'll figure it out." And they did. Within 48 hours, humans had created working life support systems for the systems were rough and improvised, but they worked. Engineers refined them each day, making them better and more efficient. Lieutenant Shin was a translator. She learned languages easily, and now she was learning the most important language of her life. She studied the language day and night, using the translation software and direct lessons from teachers. Her job was to help humans and communicate. She translated medical instructions. She translated construction plans. She translated simple conversations between humans and aliens who were trying to understand each other. One day, asked to speak with her privately, they sat in a small office at one of the landing sites, looked at her with his three eyes, and could see confusion in his expression. "I do not understand your species," said. "We have been here for 1 week. In that time you have housed all of us. You have fed all of us. You have given us medical care. You have not asked for anything in return." "We don't need anything in return," replied. "But you are spending so much. Your news reports say your governments are spending billions of dollars. Your militaries are working full-time on refugee support. Your volunteers are giving their time for free. This cannot continue. Your economy will collapse." Shook her head. "Our economy is actually growing. Employment is up. We're building new factories to produce supplies. We're training new workers. We're developing new technology. This is creating jobs, not destroying them." "That makes no sense," said. "The Galactic Union's economic models predict that refugee support always damages the host economy." "Maybe their models are wrong," suggested. "Or maybe we do things differently." On the Galactic Union monitoring station, Commander reviewed the data from Earth with increasing confusion. His economic advisors stood around him, all staring at the numbers. "This is impossible," said Vex, who had arrived to observe the situation personally. "Their economy should be in crisis. Their society should be experiencing massive unrest. Their government should be fighting over resources." "But they're not," replied. "Look at this data. Their stock markets are up. Their production is increasing. Their international cooperation is at an all-time high. They're not fighting. They're working together." "Then they're hiding the real problems. No species can sustain this level of resource expenditure for outsiders." But there were no hidden problems. Yes, there were challenges. Some humans were afraid of the aliens. Some communities struggled with the sudden changes. There were protests in a few cities. There were arguments in government meetings. But the overwhelming response was positive. Schools started preparing for children. Restaurants experimented with silicon-based food. Artists began creating works that combined human and styles. Scientists collaborated on research projects. Engineers shared knowledge. The integration happened faster than anyone expected. Who had skills started finding work. Some helped build more permanent housing. Some shared their knowledge of advanced technology. Some taught classes about the galaxy. Some simply told their stories to humans who listened with fascination. Captain Lee noticed something interesting during his daily coordination meetings. Military officers from different nations were working together more smoothly than ever before. The refugee crisis had forced unprecedented cooperation, and it was working. "We should keep this up after the crisis is over," suggested an American admiral during one meeting. "What crisis?" replied. "This isn't a crisis, this is just the new normal." 3 months after the first landing, the Galactic Union sent official observers to Earth. They wanted to see the disaster firsthand. They wanted to document how quickly a primitive species collapsed under the weight of refugee support. What they found shocked them. They visited the settlement in Australia, where 5,000 lived alongside human communities. They saw children playing with human children. They saw mixed work crews building permanent homes. They saw and humans sharing meals, even though they ate completely different food. They visited factories where humans and worked side by side, producing silicon-based food and carbon-based food in the same facility. They saw efficiency improvements that came from combining two different ways of thinking. They visited schools where human teachers learned about culture and teachers learned about human history. They saw friendship forming between species that had never met before. The lead observer was a diplomat named. She submitted her report to the Galactic Union Council with a note that said, "I do not understand what I witnessed. By all our models, Earth should be in chaos. Instead, I found harmony. I found cooperation. I found something we have never achieved with our refugees. I found integration." Vex read the report 3 times. He didn't believe it. He couldn't believe it. But the data was clear. Earth wasn't just surviving the refugee crisis. Earth was thriving because of it. What are they? He wondered aloud. What kind of species welcomes 40,000 aliens and becomes stronger? No one had an answer. Humanity was an anomaly that the galaxy had never encountered before. Back on Earth and finished building their 100th house. They had become friends during the construction work, had taught about engineering, had taught about human improvisation. "My people are starting to feel at home here," said. "We came here expecting to die. Instead, we're learning to live again." Smiled, "Good, because you're not refugees anymore, you're neighbors." 6 months passed, and the galaxy waited for Earth to collapse. The Galactic Union Council held weekly meetings to discuss the human situation. They reviewed economic reports, social studies, and cultural analyses. They looked for signs of the inevitable breakdown. The signs never came. Professor Minyu worked at Seoul National University, where he studied economics. When they arrived, he started a research project to track the economic impact. His team collected data from every country that hosted refugees. They analyzed spending, employment, production, and trade. The results surprised everyone, including Minyu himself. "Our economy is growing faster than before the refugees arrived," he explained during a presentation to the United Nations Economic Council. "Unemployment dropped by 2% globally. Innovation increased by 15%. International trade is up. Infrastructure development is accelerating. By every measure, the refugee integration has been economically beneficial." "How is that possible?" asked a council member from Germany. "We're spending billions on refugee support." "Yes, but we're also gaining billions from increased productivity, new technology, and expanded markets. The brought knowledge that's helping our industries advance. More importantly, the crisis forced global cooperation that's making all our systems more efficient." Minyu published his findings in a paper called Resource Allocation During the Crisis. The paper went viral on Earth and eventually reached the Galactic Union. Alien economists read it with disbelief. The numbers didn't match any model they had. Vex brought 3 economic experts to review Minyu's work. They spent weeks checking the data, looking for errors or lies. They found none. Earth's economy really was growing because of the refugees, not despite them. "This shouldn't be possible," one expert said. "Refugees are always an economic burden." "Perhaps we've been doing it wrong," suggested another expert quietly. Young engineer didn't care about economic models. He cared about solar panels. He worked for a renewable energy company that was trying to improve solar technology. His had ideas that changed everything. "On my world, we used silicon in different ways," explained one day. "Your solar panels are efficient, but you could make them better. Let me show you." What showed was a method for processing silicon that they had developed centuries ago. It was considered basic technology in the galaxy, but it was revolutionary for humans. Within 3 months, their company had prototypes for solar panels that were 30% more efficient than before. Stories like this happened across Earth. Engineers shared ideas that improved human technology. Human engineers showed new ways to think about problems. The collaboration created innovations that neither species could have achieved alone. But the integration wasn't just about technology and economics. It was about culture. In a school in Sydney, Australia, human children and children learned together. The teacher was a human woman named Ms. Park, and she taught both human and history. The interesting thing, she told her mixed class, is that both our species have similar stories. We both have myths about heroes. We both have art that expresses emotion. We both value family and friendship. A young student raised her hand. But we're so different, we don't even breathe the same air. Being different doesn't mean we can't understand each other, Ms. Park replied. It just means we have more to learn. The cultural exchange happened everywhere. Human restaurants added silicon-based dishes to their menus. Artists collaborated with human musicians to create music that combined both species' hearing ranges. Sports teams formed with mixed players, creating new games that worked for both silicon and carbon-based athletes. There were problems, of course. Some humans didn't want aliens in their communities. Some struggled to adapt to Earth's different culture. Misunderstandings happened. Accidents occurred. Arguments broke out. But humans addressed each problem with the same determination they had shown from the beginning. When conflicts arose, they talked through them. When mistakes happened, they learned from them. When integration was difficult, they worked harder. Ambassador traveled to the Galactic Union headquarters to present Earth's progress report. She was the first human to visit the massive space station where the Council met. The experience was intimidating, but had faced difficult diplomatic situations before. The Council chamber was enormous. Representatives from 100 species sat in curved rows, all looking down at the speaker's platform. Walked to the platform calmly, even though her heart was racing. She activated her presentation, and holographic displays showed data from Earth. The numbers told the story clearly. No economic collapse, no social breakdown, no infrastructure failure. Instead, there was growth, cooperation, and integration. Impossible, Vex said loudly. You must be hiding the real cost, the burden on your people, the strain on your resources. There is no burden, interrupted firmly but politely. There are challenges, yes. There are difficulties, absolutely. But we don't see 40,000 refugees. We see 40,000 people who needed help. Now we see 40,000 neighbors, colleagues, and friends. But the economic cost is offset by economic gains. Our Professor Minus research is available for your review. The data is clear. Then your social stability must be suffering. Our social cooperation is at historic highs. Yes, some communities struggled with change, but most communities embraced it. We're learning from each other. We're growing together. Vex sat back in his seat, frustrated. I don't understand your species. This behavior doesn't match any model we have. You spent resources on aliens who can give you nothing in return. They give us plenty in return, said. They give us knowledge, they give us friendship, they give us new perspectives, and most importantly, they give us the chance to be the kind of species we want to be. The council chamber fell silent. No one knew how to respond to that. A private investigator named watched presentation from Earth. He had been hired by several galactic corporations to investigate Earth's real agenda. The corporations were convinced that humans had ulterior motives. They wanted to know what Earth was really planning. Spent 3 months investigating. He interviewed government officials, refugee workers, military officers, and ordinary citizens. He analyzed spending records, policy documents, and communication logs. He searched for hidden plans, secret deals, or ulterior motives. He found nothing. His final report was short and honest. They have no hidden agenda. They helped the refugees simply because they could. I cannot explain this behavior within any known economic or political framework. Humans appear to operate on principles that don't match standard galactic civilization models. They genuinely believe that helping others is worthwhile even without guaranteed returns on investment. The corporations that hired him didn't believe the report. They paid him anyway and launched their own investigations. Those investigations reached the same conclusion. Humans really were just helping because they thought it was right. Back on Earth had settled into his new life. He worked as an advisor to the United Nations, helping humans understand galactic politics and culture. He had a small apartment in Geneva, Switzerland, where he lived comfortably. One evening, he invited Dr. Park to dinner. Was the scientist who had first detected the fleet. The two had become friends over the past months. "I've been thinking about something," said as they ate their respective foods at the same table. "The galaxy sees your species as primitive. They think you're naive and foolish." "Are we?" asked with a smile. "No, I think the galaxy is wrong. I think humanity might be the most advanced species we've encountered." "That seems unlikely. You have faster ships, better technology, more knowledge. But we don't have what you have. We don't have this instinct to help others even when it costs us. We don't have this ability to integrate different species so quickly. We don't have this optimism that problems can be solved through cooperation." Paused. "Maybe we've been measuring advancement wrong." Considered that. "Maybe we're all just doing the best we can. You survived the destruction of your world. That takes strength we've never had to develop. And you welcomed us when no one else would. That takes courage we'd forgotten we needed." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, two representatives of different species who had found common ground on a small planet in a quiet corner of the galaxy. The warning came at dawn. Detection systems at the edge of the solar system picked up three massive objects emerging from quantum space. The objects were biological ships, each one the size of a small moon. They were heading toward Earth. The devourers had found the... Dr. Park was in his office when the alert came through. His screen flashed red and his hands went cold. He had studied the data about the devourers that provided months ago. He knew what they could do. They had consumed an entire planet. They had chased across the galaxy. Now they were here. Within an hour, every government on Earth knew about the threat. Emergency sessions convened in capitals around the world. Military forces went on high alert. Scientists analyzed the incoming ships, trying to understand what humanity was facing. The news spread quickly to the public. Fear rippled through human and communities. People wondered if Earth had made a terrible mistake by accepting the refugees. Stood before the United Nations General Assembly, his three eyes filled with pain and guilt. His voice shook as he spoke through the translator. "This is our fault. We brought this danger to your world. We should leave. Load us back onto our ships. Send us away. You don't have to die for us. You've already given us more than we deserved. Please save yourselves." Ambassador stood up. "Where would you go?" "Anywhere. It doesn't matter. As long as we lead the devourers away from Earth. And they would follow you and destroy you. After everything we've been through together, you think we'd just let that happen. But this is not your fight." "Yes, it is," said the Secretary General of the UN, a woman from Brazil. "You're not refugees anymore. You're citizens of Earth, and we protect our own." The General Assembly voted. The decision was unanimous. Earth would fight. The Galactic Union Council watched from their monitoring stations in disbelief. They sent urgent messages to Earth, offering advice on how to evacuate properly. They explained that fighting the devourers was suicide. They calculated the odds. Earth had a less than 1% chance of survival. Earth ignored the messages and prepared for war. Admiral Nam stood on the bridge of the ROKS, humanity's first combat-capable space vessel. The ship had been built in record time using a combination of human engineering and knowledge. It wasn't perfect, but it could fight. Around Earth, a makeshift defense fleet assembled. There were military vessels hastily converted for space combat. There were cargo ships equipped with weapons. There were experimental fighters that had never been tested in real battle. There were satellites modified to fire missiles. It wasn't much compared to the Devourer bioships, but it was everything Earth had. Looked at his tactical display. The Devourers would reach Earth's orbit in 14 hours. His crew was ready. They were scared, but they were ready. "We're outnumbered and out-teched," his tactical officer reported quietly. Smiled grimly. "That's never stopped us before." In the settlements on Earth, 40,000 made a decision. They would not hide while humans fought for them. They knew about Devourer technology. They knew about Devourer tactics. They had information that could help. The engineer who worked with volunteered for the defense force. So did thousands of others. They took positions on ships, in command centers, and on weapon platforms. They shared every piece of knowledge they had about fighting the Devourers. "We survived them once," told as they prepared their fighter for launch. "We can survive them again, together." The Battle of Sol began at dawn. The 3 Devourer bioships entered the solar system with confidence. They had destroyed countless civilizations. They had consumed entire worlds. They expected Earth to be easy prey. What they encountered was something they had never seen before. The Devourers sent out swarms of smaller bioships to attack first. These ships were living creatures bred for combat, with organic weapons and fast speed. They moved in coordinated patterns, overwhelming defenses through sheer numbers. Earth's defense fleet scattered and adapted. Instead of holding formation like traditional military forces, human ships broke into small groups. They moved unpredictably. They attacked from unexpected angles. They used tactics that made no sense by conventional military standards. Captain O piloted a fighter that was barely more than a modified shuttle with weapons strapped to it. She flew into the Devourer swarm with no fear, weaving between bioships, firing at weak points that intelligence had identified. When her weapons ran out, she didn't retreat. She set her fighter on a collision course with a cluster of Devourer ships, ejecting at the last second while her fighter's AI completed the suicide run. The explosion destroyed dozens of enemy vessels. Lieutenant commanded a group of modified satellites in high orbit. She had prepared a trap using captured mining explosives from asteroid operations. When a section of the Devourer fleet moved into position, she triggered the mines. The coordinated explosions created a chain reaction that trapped and destroyed hundreds of bioships. The Devourers hadn't expected humans to fight like this. They hadn't expected the ferocity, the creativity, or the complete disregard for personal safety. Humans fought like animals protecting their territory. They fought with a desperation that was almost insane. On the ground, Engineer worked with a team of hackers and programmers. They had captured a damaged Devourer bioship during an early skirmish. Now they were trying something crazy. "Devourer ships are alive," explained to his team. "They have biological computer systems. If we can hack into those systems, maybe we can introduce corrupted code." "That's impossible," said one programmer. "We don't understand their biology well enough." "Then we learn fast," replied. "We have 3 hours to figure this out or Earth dies." They worked with controlled panic, testing theories, making mistakes, learning from each failure. Biologists helped identify weak points in the Devourer system. Human programmers wrote code that could exploit those weaknesses. 3 hours later, they had something that might work. It was rushed, untested, and probably wouldn't function correctly. They uploaded it to the captured bioship and sent it back toward the Devourer fleet with a remote pilot. The bioship rejoined the Devourer swarm. The corrupted code spread like a virus through the biological network that connected all the ships. It caused malfunctions, communication breakdowns, and system failures. The Devourer fleet's coordination collapsed. Admiral saw the chaos in the enemy formation and pressed his advantage. All ships, full assault, hit them while they're confused. The Earth defense fleet surged forward. Every ship, every fighter, every weapon platform fired everything they had. The battle became a desperate melee with no strategy beyond survival and aggression. The fighting lasted 14 hours. Ships were destroyed on both sides. Humans and died together fighting side by side. The casualties were terrible. The cost was high, but slowly, impossibly, the tide turned. The Devourer bioships, evolved for overwhelming weaker civilizations through superior numbers and technology, didn't know how to fight an enemy that refused to die. They didn't understand an enemy that became more dangerous when cornered. They couldn't adapt to humans who broke every rule of conventional warfare. When the first Devourer bioship began to retreat, the other two followed. They fled the solar system, damaged and confused, leaving behind the wreckage of their swarm. Earth had won. The victory came at a cost. 20% of Earth's defense fleet was destroyed. Thousands of humans died. Hundreds of died. The orbital infrastructure was damaged. Some satellites were lost. The economic cost would take years to recover from. But Earth survived, and the galaxy watched in stunned silence. On the bridge of the ROKS, Admiral looked at the tactical display showing the retreating Devourer ships. His hands shook from exhaustion and adrenaline. Around him, his crew was crying, cheering, and collapsing in relief. "Did we really just do that?" his tactical officer asked. "Yes," replied, "we really did." At the Galactic Union monitoring station, Commander stared at his screen in shock. He had watched the entire battle. He had seen a primitive species defeat the Devourers. It shouldn't have been possible. But humans had done the impossible before. Why stop now? Vex sat in his quarters, reviewing the battle data for the 5th time. His hands trembled slightly. He sent a message to the Galactic Union Council with a simple subject line: "We need to talk about humanity." On Earth, stood in the ruins of a damaged defense platform, looking up at the sky. Beside him, Dr. Park was bandaging a wound on his arm. "Your species is insane," said quietly. "Maybe," replied with a tired smile. "But we're your species now too. We're all in this together." "Yes," agreed, "we are." The news of Earth's victory spread across the galaxy faster than light. Species that had never heard of humanity suddenly knew their name. The primitive world that defeated the Devourers became the subject of countless news reports, academic studies, and political debates. The Galactic Union Council convened an emergency session 1 week after the battle. Representatives from 100 worlds gathered to discuss what Earth's victory meant. The debate lasted for 3 days. "They beat the Devourers," said one, still unable to believe it. "A pre-contact species with improvised weapons beat the Devourers." "They didn't just beat them," another added. "They fought to protect refugees. They risked their entire civilization for aliens they'd only known for 6 months." "This changes everything," Vex said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. He had been Earth's biggest critic, the one who predicted their collapse. Now he looked different, humbled, thoughtful. "What do you mean?" asked the council leader. "We turned away the refugees because we were afraid. Afraid of the cost, afraid of the risk, afraid of the Devourers. Earth accepted them despite all those same fears. And not only did they survive, they won. We've been doing everything wrong." The council chamber fell silent. No one wanted to admit it, but Vex was right. Earth had proven that the galaxy's approach to refugees was both morally wrong and strategically foolish. 6 months after the battle, Ambassador returned to the Galactic Union headquarters. This time, she wasn't there to defend Earth's actions. She was there to present a proposal. The council chamber was packed. Every species wanted to hear what Earth had to say, stood at the speaker's platform looking calm and confident. Behind her, Holographic displays showed images from Earth, images of humans and living together, images of joint construction projects, images of mixed communities thriving. The galaxy has asked us why began. Why did we accept the refugees? Why did we spend our resources? Why did we fight? The answer has always been simple, because it was right. She paused and looked around the chamber. But I'm not here to tell you what you should do. I'm here to show you what we learned. Integration doesn't weaken a society, it strengthens it. Refugees aren't burdens, they're opportunities. Helping others doesn't make you vulnerable, it makes you resilient. The holographic displays changed, showing economic data. Professor Minu's research is now available to all galactic species. His models prove that refugee integration can strengthen economies rather than burden them. We're happy to share our methods, our successes, and our mistakes. Dr. Han, now Earth's chief advisor, spoke next. She presented the medical and scientific advances that came from human collaboration. We learned more about silicon-based biology in 6 months than we could have learned in decades of isolated research. The learned new approaches to carbon-based systems. Both species benefited. This is what cooperation looks like. Engineer presented technical data about the defense systems Earth developed. We couldn't have built these systems without knowledge. They couldn't have adapted their technology to work against the devourers without human creativity. Together, we achieved what neither species could do alone. The presentations continued for hours. Education integration, cultural exchange, infrastructure development, military coordination. Every aspect of the refugee integration was documented and explained. Finally, stepped forward. The old had become the official representative of his people to the Galactic Union. He looked out at the assembled species with his 3 eyes and spoke clearly. My people came to Earth expecting to die. We were refugees with no hope, turned away by every civilized world. We found humanity, and they showed us something we had forgotten. They showed us that mercy isn't weakness. They showed us that compassion isn't foolishness. They showed us that helping others, even at great cost, is the strongest thing a species can do. His voice grew stronger. We fought beside humans to defend Earth. We bled with them. We died with them. And we won with them. Now we live with them, not as refugees in camps, but as citizens in communities. This is what the galaxy could be. This is what we should be. The council chamber erupted in discussion. Some species were skeptical, some were interested, some were inspired, but no one could deny the evidence. Earth's approach worked. Over the following year, the Galactic Union passed a series of reforms. The Refugee Protection Act established new standards for treating displaced populations. The Species Integration Protocol provided guidelines for helping refugees become productive members of society. The Defensive Alliance Treaty created a mutual defense agreement for species that accepted refugees. All of these reforms were based on Earth's example. Professor Minu became famous across the galaxy. His economic models were taught in universities on a dozen worlds. Species that had turned away refugees for centuries began opening their borders, carefully at first, then with increasing confidence. Not every integration went as smoothly as Earth's had. Some species struggled with the cultural changes. Some refugees had difficulty adapting to new worlds. There were failures and setbacks, but the overall trend was clear. The galaxy was learning. On Earth, life continued to change and evolve. 10 years after the first landing, humanity and though were so integrated that visiting aliens had trouble telling where one community ended and another began. Young who had been children when they arrived were now young adults who spoke both their native language and human languages fluently. They studied in Earth's universities. They worked in Earth's industries. They served in Earth's military. Human children who grew up with neighbors considered aliens to be completely normal. The idea that their grandparents' generation had never met an alien seemed strange to them. The ceremony for Earth's admission to the Galactic Union as a full member took place in Seoul, South Korea. It was held on a warm autumn day in a park that overlooked the city. Thousands of people attended, human and standing together. The Secretary-General of the United Nations signed the treaty documents, now elderly by standards, signed as the representative. Vex, representing the Galactic Union, signed last. Earth brings something new to the Union, Vex said during his speech. They bring optimism, they bring determination, they bring the belief that we can be better than we are. I was wrong about humanity. I thought their compassion was weakness. I was wrong about everything. Dr. Park attended the ceremony as an honored guest. He was old now, walking with a cane, but his eyes were still bright. Beside him stood, also aged but still sharp. "Do you remember that first transmission?" asked. "When you said you just wanted a small island, a place to die in peace?" His translator carried his gentle laughter. "I remember. I also remember thinking humans were either the kindest species in the galaxy or the most foolish. And now I know you're both, and that's exactly what the galaxy needed." They watched the ceremony together, two old friends from different species, living on a planet that had become home to both. In orbit above Earth, the combined human space station, Unity, housed the headquarters of the new Galactic Defense Initiative. Admiral Nam, now retired but still influential, had helped design the program. It trained mixed-species crews to defend against threats like the Devourers. Lieutenant Shin, now a commander, ran the translation and cultural exchange programs that helped new species integrate into the galactic community. Her work was based on the lessons learned from the integration. Captain O, who had survived her fighter's destruction during the battle, now trained pilots from 6 different species. Her tactics, unconventional, aggressive, and effective, were studied across the galaxy. Engineer and his partner ran a research company that employed both humans and they developed technology that was sold to species across the galaxy. Their solar panel designs were now standard on 30 different worlds. The population on Earth had grown to 45,000, including children born after the landing. They were no longer refugees. They were no longer even just citizens. They were family. One evening, a young human child asked her teacher a question in class. "Teacher, why do other species think it's strange that we helped your people?" Thought carefully about how to answer. "Because most species think about cost first and morality second. Humans think about morality first and worry about the cost later. That's very unusual." "Is it better?" "I think so, but it's also harder. It requires courage to help others when you don't know if you can afford it." "But we could afford it, right? We're doing okay." "Yes," said with a smile. "You're doing okay, better than okay." Late that night in cities across Earth, humans finished their work and went home to their families. Some families were all human, some were mixed. All of them were normal. The galaxy had been stunned by humanity's reaction to 40,000 refugees. They had expected Earth to collapse, to fail, to regret their decision. Instead, Earth had shown them a different path, a harder path, a more expensive path, but also a better path. And now, slowly but surely, the galaxy was learning to follow it. In the archives of the Galactic Union, the record of Earth's admission contained a note written by Vex. It read, "Today we welcomed humanity as a full member species. In truth, they should be teaching us. They understood something we forgot long ago, that civilization is measured not by how we treat our own, but by how we treat those who have nothing to offer us. Earth accepted refugees when no one else would. They fought for them when no one else dared. They showed us what it means to be truly civilized. May we learn from their example." On Earth, in a small apartment in Geneva, sat by his window and looked up at the stars. 40,000 refugees had landed, expecting to die. Instead, they had learned to live. They had found a home. They had become part of something bigger than themselves. And humanity. Humanity had proven that compassion wasn't weakness, that helping others wasn't foolish, that the measure of a civilization wasn't its technology or its military power, but its willingness to extend a hand to those in need. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly how it should be.